Is a skincare industry profiting from making people insecure?
It's pretty easy to play on people's insecurities because appearance means so much to people.
Explain what is collagen.
The principal protein in skin is collagen. Keeping it happy and healthy is directly linked to youthfulness and longevity. As much as we diss sunscreens, they are required.
What happens when we go to bed without removing the makeup?
You can have small bugs that can come and inhabit uncleaned, unwashed skin.
What are some of the best skincare habits you've seen work consistently?
I always talk about sleep first. Women who were sleep deprived found themselves less attractive as compared to those who had enough sleep. That kind of education knowledge needs to go out. And that's not going to be built over a day. And that's not going to be built at a level that you scroll.
Is there a trend you wish people would stop following altogether?
We are trying the 10-step Korean routine, which is BS according to me. It's so toxic.
I thought, okay, it's a dermatologist who's going to come. I'm going to break all these myths that are there around skin and hair and all of that. Damn, I'm mind blown. I love this. I'm sure everybody's going to love this too. Most of us have been sold a dream when it comes to skincare. More products, more trends, more procedures is equal to better skin. But what if I told you most of the products that we're actually using are harming us rather than doing good for us? And that's exactly why we had Ranita Rajan, who's one of India's most sought after dermatologists, on a show. I really love Ranita because she believes in research and science over marketing. And she believes in real results over all the trends. And she's literally broken down every single myth that is there around the skincare industry and how most of us are made to feel insecure as a process of this entire marketing that is happening on social media. And with so many years of research and expertise, she's literally broken down to us exactly what are the things we're supposed to do and what are the things that don't really matter that the social media is enforcing on us. It was a masterclass for me when it came to skincare and understanding our body and health in a holistic way. So I highly recommend you watch the podcast till the end so that you don't fall for any marketing gimmick that is there out on social media. Today morning, I was showing my team, like we're doing a podcast with Ranita, and I told them, Anga, just guess her age. And I'm like, 32, 33, 35. I'm like, she's in her mid 40s. Tell me, what do you do? Internally and externally, what do you do?
There are things that I get done for myself as a dermatologist way of looking after self, and there are things that I have as habits, and there are things that I'm exploring from the point of view of biohacking. So that's my part. I wore a whoop when I came and I just took it off because it looks unaesthetic for now. I'm not attached to the biohacking part, but I would kind of use those tools to get a sense of what it is. I was wearing a glucometer, the sensor for some time. I've been wearing all kinds of devices to check.
This is plain out of curiosity.
I think this is the future.
Okay.
I think the practice of medicine has come from being something that's individualized. When you have faith healers, I'm talking about the ancient times, giving you something. Then it moved on to say somebody like population medicine, antibiotics, bacteria were discovered. Then we started giving population medicine, vaccinations, all of that. And it's come back to a place where we call it the journey of n equal to 1. Where you may have XYZ protocols or products or tools, but they need to fit into this n equal to 1 person. What happens is when we try to do everything together, then it may be not for this physical body to accept it, or for this person's ethos to be in comfort. So it's now come back to where for this person what works. This kind of reflects from my exposome science interest. I will explain a little bit. So when you come in, you come in with a set of genes. Okay. That's like your blueprint.
Okay.
This person will have this kind of height, color, skin tone, eye color, hair color, all of those things. It usually comes in with a certain blueprint, right? And then as we develop, not all of them will have the same bearing. For example, both two sisters, or you have fraternal twins, they will come with different sets. Even identical twins may come with different sets of temperaments.
Is there like a reason why these genetically, whatever the genes are passed on to a specific child and not to a specific child?
It's random
It's
permutations and combinations. There may be some influences at a very cellular level. I think some of which may not have been understood as yet.
Okay.
But from what we know, it's multiple different combinations that can happen. In fact, when the embryo is formed, if the body feels that the embryo is not healthy, many of the embryos get shed without us knowing even.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a good number of embryos that don't make it even to a detection level.
Okay.
Or even in the early pregnancy state itself, you feel like, or they may just 6 weeks or something, they may just pass because it was not fit enough to grow.
Okay.
So there's a lot of rejection that happens. The body itself tries to find out like what's good, what's not good.
Okay.
So, but mostly it's a lot about a mix of certain things. Some of it could have been inherited along the way as to how we process, why we get more fatty liver than the rest of the world.
Right.
It'll keep building this genetic data keeps building. And then after you born, suppose we have two households, right? You take a pair of twins, put them in an affluent household which has the best kind of nutrition, put the other person in a place where they have malnutrition. Even with everything the same way, this person is going to grow and achieve their full height and potential, and this person is not going to do that. Because you can have stunted growth with malnutrition. This is well known, right? You have certain things that can bypass the whole nutrition process also. So then that's how you see that there is a big discrepancy. And the difference happens because you're exposed to a different set of conditions. You are exposed to a different set of conditions, out of which comes a whole universe called exposome. And what they identified at that point was that despite what we were born with, we're exposed to a whole different set of conditions around us that decides whether we will achieve full potential or not.
Okay.
That recognition also comes as part of how do you know you even need to do this?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Education, exposure to people.
Yeah.
That is also part of the exposome. Oh, it's not just the water you drink, the food you eat.
Okay.
Everything that you're exposed to. It can have bearing on multiple things.
Okay.
Somebody studying under a street light, doing this, they had a certain kind of personality,
Yeah.
but they also had the street light in that place to help them.
Yeah.
So it could be any combination.
Okay.
And it could be in any discipline. It could be in the discipline of psychology. It could be in the discipline of, cancer epidemiology. It could be in dermatology, aesthetics, longevity, environmental health. It could be anything. But you basically have the organism, the human organism called the genome. And then you have the exposome that you are exposed to. And then this study called epigenetics. How do you change what you're born with? Or how do you influence or impact what you're born with external factors that provide the best of conditions for you to achieve your full human potential?
Okay.
Which gives a big scope for all of us to come together in what is called as holistic medicine.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would only be like prescriptive medicine.
Okay. Only for this problem.
Problem solving or like, I see this working in 7 out of 10 people and therefore
Oh, okay.
here is what it is. But when you don't pick up that holistic aspect, if somebody doesn't sleep and they want good hair care, it won't happen. So it won't happen at a sustainable level. But if that person has a strong genome that it doesn't even recognize this risk factor, they will still have that. And that's the science we need to know as to who is vulnerable for what.
Okay.
And there's other omes, like you have the gut microbiome, which decides how you will digest something. Then there is the skin microbiome. There's a lot of things that are going on. And that's typically the exposome science, the beauty of exposome science itself. And because it's something that's so advanced, so difficult to get a hold of. And unfortunately or fortunately, I'm still dealing with I have to be in control of what I know. I have to know what I have to know. So that gives me a fair bit of insecurity because the science is so beautiful, but it's just vast.
Yeah.
And that is another insecurity factor.
Okay. Everything is growing so fast. Everything is becoming irrelevant
It's
so fast.
keeping up with the science.
Oh.
Keeping up with the neighbors is so easy. I don't even think about, what's the material
Yeah.
point, but
Yeah.
I probably will get jealous if somebody knows a lot more than me and learns a lot more faster than me.
Interesting.
I'll be like, okay, what learning hack are they using? I want to
Your
get
problems are very weird.
that. I know.
And they're not, I mean, for most people, they can't even relate to this. She has a problem with somebody reading. It's
I mean,
crazy.
like, that's the currency, right? I need to be able to know what's best for my,
Yes.
clientele.
Yes.
I want to be able to know, and if there's a hack that they are getting there faster than me in terms of how they are assimilating knowledge, I want to be a better sponge than them. Like, what are they doing?
I think you're a very curious person.
Mm.
And when I say curious, it is not even from a superficial point of view. You just want to go layer by layer within to understand what the root cause for all of that is so that we can fix it from there.
Yeah.
That's
I'm unfortunately super curious.
That's amazing. I love that quality because even when people ask questions, when you walked in and the kind of questions you asked, I was like, I am going to have a great time having a conversation because I love intellectually stimulating conversations, no matter what it is about. It just gives me a high. It's my dope, I guess.
Likewise.
So talk to me. You were wearing this one, you were wearing this one, all of that.
So, getting back to what do I do? Yes, that's the hacking that I do.
Mm.
And between my regular habits, for example, for me, I've probably used sunscreens, sun protection, because I realized very early on that I have certain risk factors that would put me at risk of pigmentation. I carry the genes for it.
Mm.
So I started, and luckily for me, I got into dermatology when I was 24.
Mm.
So I also had access to the knowledge that here is how you should protect yourself.
Mm.
Earlier on, I think the sunscreens we used back then were fairly the ones that are now under the axe for having endocrine disruption. So I was also able to switch ahead to safer ones ahead of the curve, as and when I got more information about it. So that remains a staple for me completely. And the second thing is that right now I'm also working on a holistic diet point of view.
Okay.
So I would have enough protein.
Mm.
I will also have, I have cut back on sugar quite a bit. We have these challenges in the group where I'm unable to do it alone. So I turn to my community on Instagram. Those are the things I will miss if at all Instagram crashes. So with my community, so then they're all sending like one more day, let's hang in there and all of those things. I don't know if I'm motivating them, but they are motivating me.
You.
So together we do these sugar challenges, sugar-free challenges and stuff. And I also have been fairly religious about trying and having dinner early.
What time?
If all is well and I'm able to actually take that space to get away from work and finish it, I'd like to finish it by 5:36.
Interesting.
And recently I've also brought a little bit of discipline, saying that if I choose to work and miss that time, I will only end up with protein powder after or collagen after. I will not do carbs.
Okay.
Maybe have an egg white or something, but I will not do carbs in the
Okay.
night as much as possible.
Okay.
I succeed 80% of the time. The days I fail miserably, I guess. So, like, okay, bring it on. Anyway, you lost for the day. So that helps. Not so recently, I've been working out post-delivery fairly consistent. I've been working out, but the consistency and the regularity has been a little bit more ever since I turned 40, 41. Last 2-3 years, especially 42 to 44, I think I am putting in the work. I've had some health challenges, normal mid-40s drama. So I find that it helps a lot.
Majorly strength training?
Majorly strength training. The layout of the clinic is such that the days that I go, I will clock in 10,000 steps without
Easily.
thinking about it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just that we are in 5 floors and then we are in different rooms. We don't have consultation rooms where you come in.
Okay.
We go.
Okay.
So then most of my team also gets passive exercise that way.
Okay.
All of us are, at least cardio-wise, we have sorted.
Okay.
So the remaining 3 days I devote to strength training and mostly strength training, but I'm also in a lot of rehab.
Okay.
So in general, so then that kind of...
The cardio is taken care.
Yeah.
Okay. You spoke about collagen, right?
Mhm.
So explain what is it and why do we need it?
So then the principal protein in skin at this point, or the structural protein that is responsible for integrity, is collagen. There are other smaller proteins, but this kind of forms the largest part of the skin in terms of its actual weight. So then keeping it happy and healthy is directly linked to youthfulness and longevity. And it also takes care of the layer above. So the dermis, the second layer of the skin, where the collagen is concentrated, it's important for us to have a certain level of health in there. The natural growth of the body of a baby, of a child, by the stretch, actively promotes collagen generation for the first 2 decades of life. After that, once all of that active growth plateaus, then whatever collagen remains is turned over at a particular rate. It starts breaking down when you expose it to smoking, environmental pollution, stress, not having the right kind of foods, having more sugar. It kind of tends to break down over a period of time. And because it's the primary protein that's holding everything together, you start seeing aging. Or when you, for example, when you have scars, when we are repairing scars, we always talk about something that induces new collagen, which fills the skin up.
Okay.
So for us, it's always about the collagen remodeling, collagen induction. So then, as the collagen starts dipping down, you balance it with a high protein diet. So collagen has only 3 amino acids. Dietary protein is supposed to have all of the 9 essential amino acids. And you basically talk about how to bring up the collagen by having, well-balanced, high protein diet. But sometimes it's also that when you supply the collagen as collagen peptides themselves, we see clinical improvement in skin sagging, hydration, clarity, and all of that.
So you consume it.
You consume it.
Okay.
You can also apply it, but it's a little difficult for it to penetrate completely. There are collagen creams, but the kind of results are usually based on data that comes from taking collagen directly in. We also stimulate collagen on the skin by using procedures like microneedling, radiofrequency stimulation, laser procedures. All of that keep the collagen coming back in the skin. That's typically one of the main procedural areas that dermatology is about.
Okay.
Aesthetic dermatology or cosmetic dermatology is about. So we kind of work on that. Now, how does this help over a period of time is because when you replace or replenish collagen, it keeps your skin happier, the top layer happier, and therefore less aged compared to how it would be if the collagen were to break down.
Okay.
Somebody who's not smoking is anyway protecting their collagen as compared to somebody who's smoking.
Right.
Somebody who's not missing to use their sunscreen because the sun breaks down collagen.
Okay.
Is already working on their collagen.
So basically, when you use a sunscreen, you're protecting your collagen from not breaking down.
Yes.
Is there anything else that the sunscreen does?
Sunscreen primarily protects against the pigmentation not acting up because of sun exposure.
Okay.
Because many things, many pigmentary conditions are there which get stimulated by sun exposure. And the sunscreen protects against that because our primary form of aging in Indian skin type, even though we discussed collagen so extensively, is pigmentation acting up.
Okay.
We age by pigmentation, sunspots, pigmentation that happens naturally or like an internal construct or because of external triggers like perfumes, hair color. All of those are also triggers for us. So we age very differently compared to the Caucasians.
Okay.
And for the longest time, it was Caucasian skin's aging protocols that we followed religiously. We have very little data coming in from Indian skin types. Our grandmas also won't look very dehydrated, but if you look at somebody of comparable age who's in the West, they would be having much deeper furrows than us.
Okay.
For us, I think the whole understanding that our skin ages differently is probably like about 10-15 years old. And that was lucky that I was there when this whole awareness part started.
Okay, so before that, all the research was not done based on Indian skin.
See, the research itself, the number of papers that are coming in, we call this skin of color because it makes sense across the world. The number of papers coming in for skin of color is a hockey stick right now as compared to what it was earlier.
Why?
We were not considered a primary market.
Okay.
Until they knew that we were a primary market.
Until they knew we had the potential.
Suddenly you had a whole lot of Miss India's suddenly you had a whole lot of Miss Worlds and Miss Universes because this is a market.
Okay. Interesting.
And now we are also able to look at aesthetics as a point. Earlier in our culture, at least in the South Indian culture, at least I speak for myself, you had to look natural. That was the most important thing. somehow powder was accepted.
Yes.
Somehow a little bit of
A
I
fairness
think
cream.
kajal was
Yeah.
accepted. Sunscreen, we had a tough time getting sunscreen to be understood by people. People thought that they were pushing it for the sake of pushing it, but it had to be explained in a way that people actually understood the benefits of it. In fact, starting out, I did not want people to pick up sunscreens if they didn't like it. So the first, I think, Chosen began in a basket of sunscreens.
Okay.
People actually would try them, use them, and see which one worked for them. And then I would say, now that you are comfortable, I would need you to wear it. Otherwise, the compliance was terrible.
Okay.
And when we initially started Chosen, it was meant to be an experience center where people tried their products out,
Oh, wow. Okay.
right? And over a period of time, when we found that some of the chemicals were not approved, I cannot approve them enough for people's long-term use, is when we went into making whatever was missing.
Okay.
It was very organic.
Okay.
So when people understand sunscreens are very useful, but that they don't have to be, like, I don't recommend sunscreens for children. When people say, okay, but she got tan, it's okay. That's not really going to give you any long-term problems with pigmentation, because we've all been tanned in school, college, NCC, NSS, all of those things. We've been out swimming and all of that. As long as it's not something that is going to give you long-term problems. But for an adult, we don't repair the skin the way children do. We don't have that repair capacity. As the repair capacity starts coming down, you need to be able to supply more sun protection.
Okay.
If you will ask someone, if somebody says, okay, I will only do one thing, I will seek the shade or I will wear sunscreen, I'll be like, okay, seek the shade.
Okay.
Yeah. And if somebody says, like, I only want to use sunscreen minimally, I'll say, okay, use it for areas that can't be covered, or everywhere else, use your clothing.
Okay.
So despite having a product out there, I still feel like that is where it's difficult to switch between, say, like, definitely go buy that product versus saying, like, okay, here is what it is, figure it out for yourself. So that is the dumb part coming in there, where I'm always thinking, I don't want to be saying, like, it's an absolute thing. It's not black or white. It's
Right.
gray, where you say, okay, for XYZ reasons, use this. But if you can look after this, you'll still need to use sunscreens. We are in light. We still need to use sunscreens.
Okay, that was my next question. So even if I'm indoors, you have to use sunscreen.
The problem is that the rays that contribute to pigmentation is not only the UVB, which gets filtered by glass. It's also the visible light part of the spectrum, which is what helping us to see each other. And it's also the infrared spectrum. As these lights start heating up, it will start emitting infrared. We feel heat.
Heat, yeah.
So all of that also contributes in addition to the UVA, invisible light, and infrared, and not just the UVB.
Okay.
The longest part of, maybe like the best part of last century, it was only focused on UVB. Now these three contributing to pigmentation is a bigger deal. And therefore, and because we have something called emitted light from gadgets that also causes pigmentation. Therefore, we will end up needing to use some level of light protection over and above sun protection itself. And sunscreens do a good job of protecting that if they contain tints, or if they contain antioxidants, or if they mention that blue light spectrum and all of that is mentioned, they have the ability to protect the entire spectrum.
Okay.
And that, unfortunately, is required for our skin type, because we will develop pigmentation when we are constantly exposed to the oxidation damage from the spectrum.
Oh,
That's
boy.
how we age. Let's say you say, I really don't care about aging. Don't use sunscreens. Really. If you have that thought process, like, I am not bothered about how I look. I do not want it to be something that you carry on, and you use it without any benefit that you see, because you're not tuned to that kind of a thing. But for some of us, for the subset or for the larger group of the population, where they feel that they want to live in a way that they can signal youth and longevity for longer, when they want to look younger for longer, as much as we diss sunscreens, I think they are required. I spoke, I think, about 6 to 8 years back, that sunscreens being a necessary evil, much like your phone,
Okay.
where you'll need to be in control of what you're using.
Right.
The phone is great. It helps us achieve more. It's contributed a lot.
Yeah.
But you need to be in control of how you use it. Sunscreens are like that. If you master the art of knowing what's suitable for you, for example, in pregnancy, we do not want endocrine disrupting chemicals. So you need to be mindful of that, because it can reach the placenta and your baby. So you need to be mindful of that. It can't be that sunscreen is good versus sunscreen is bad.
Okay.
And not all of them are made equal.
Okay.
So there is a lot to this. Maybe because I'm really enamored about the melanin molecule in our skin and how it's so different and how it makes such a huge difference to how Western skin ages compared to others. I recently published a book on sunscreens, textbook, not something that not something that everybody will find interesting, but of course the postgraduates may enjoy it, doctors, dermatologists may enjoy it. And in the process is when I realized that was also the time that we were getting into sunscreens ourselves, because in 2019, 2020, after knowing what's getting absorbed, what's not getting absorbed, we had a better clarity of what sunscreens we want for chosen. And that's when the Safe Screen whole project came into being. So between the knowledge for when I was formulating to when I was, preparing that manuscript for the book, I think I see them as, I see sunscreens as a great tool, but they have to be understood. It's not something that you put on lipstick kind of a thing. It has to be understood at a very deep level. So that's where it's a very education-based aspect of what we work on.
You do a lot of research when it comes to understanding the molecules, understanding what goes inside, what should not go inside. When you just open Instagram and find an influencer who has like 1 million followers speak about do this, don't do this. How annoying is that for you?
I think I may have gotten over that.
Okay.
I think I just feel at times that, Instagram itself Instagram asks that from people, right? If you were to say, if you have to have that's why I feel like people who watch podcasts, people who are in the long form, people who read, I feel they may have a bigger need for knowing as compared to people who may have a bigger need for being entertained or engaged.
Okay.
Engaged is still better than entertained, or attention grabbed versus engaged. I think that's the format that's come out when something quick happens, So for me, that I'm not sure if that's the kind of relatability that leads to long-term learning, where you are happy seeing something come up, because it really messes up with the head. It really kills your attention, your ability to pay attention, stay away from notifications, and you actually focus. Sometimes when I'm working by myself, I'm at least looking at the phone 15 to 20 times, not checking and telling myself like, what are you even looking at the phone for? The document is here.
Yes.
You're working on this document. Whenever I hit something a little difficult, I'm like, okay.
Damn,
that's a dopamine hit.
Yes.
Right? What I'm going for is I need to make neuronal connections, because here is a paragraph that's difficult for me to understand. Here is something that I would have to write down from this till this, which involves maybe 30 seconds of thinking, which is painful, because here is my dopamine, which is like, I don't even have to do anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And my quality of work changes.
Yeah.
So I feel that when people are, when things like influencing is picking up, or when people are, I recently put out a nail trimmer option for those. And when I was looking at the comments below, people didn't even wait to listen to the 6th or 7th second where I say, don't use this if you have ingrown toenails. Right? If you have ingrown nails. Oh, I have been cutting my nails with this cutter for a really long period of time. How come suddenly something has changed? All these new, like, okay.
Wait, just at least watch the 30-second reel fully.
Yes, please listen to it, because I keep telling this to my patients all the time. So I wanted to put out something so that's easy reference for them if they want to see it later.
Yeah.
Then I realized that's the medium. That is the medium. So, but it also went viral. It also had very good reach. So I'm thinking, okay, this medium is built for this. So my longer term thing would be that, okay, here are the people that are built for this medium, and here are the people I really want to communicate with.
Okay.
So I think we need to pick our medium better.
So now, can anxiety or suppressed emotions show up in the face?
Of course, yes. I think some of the most important things that's coming up from research also is how you perceive yourself in a state of anxiety. So while you said, will it show up? it will show up most to you when you are looking at yourself in the mirror. Women who were sleep deprived found themselves less attractive as compared to those who had enough sleep. But they found themselves to be less attractive.
Okay.
There are other studies also where others perceive people who slept well as more good looking. That's also there. But then the study was very interesting because most of the times we are judging ourselves. I don't think we were meant to look at ourselves so often, but we do.
Wow. Okay.
I don't think the perception part, especially from an anthropological point of view, was based as much on appearance as it is now. Because of the limited amount of time we have to judge somebody. 6 seconds or less, right? Scroll 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Yeah. But earlier we had plenty of time to get to know the other person. But even back then, people wore identifiers. For example, in the Native American communities, if you were from a particular community, you wore a different marking on the face compared to somebody else, friend or foe, right? So we'd always had the visual cues of projecting who you are to another person. So you don't get killed, right? Wear the wrong symbol, get killed.
Okay.
Right? So anthropologically, we needed to make sense to communities. When somebody looks at you, we needed to project something so we can get their companionship or whatever benefits they brought in to live together and to survive as the fittest. So it was always about signaling what you are to somebody else. Right now, we also look at ourselves a lot more. Sometimes we misread, and therefore we misread what they must be saying. I'll give you an example. Suppose somebody has a complex about the nose, but they have a fantastic smile. The person who's observing you has 6 seconds between the fantastic smile and the nose. They're going to go for the fantastic smile.
Yes.
It's called beauty leakage. There's science behind it. I can only perceive 2 or 3 things about you. Like I was looking at you and said, whenever there was a bit of a glistening in your eye, I said, look, you're an empath. That's the only thing that's going to stay with me. I know that nice eyebrows, glossy, lovely skin, all of that, and a great choice of lip color. That's there. But the first thing that's going to come to me is I'm going to describe you to somebody else. Oh, she's an empath.
Okay.
Right? So then, but you may be thinking, I'm not talking about you as you, but generally people may be thinking that, okay, she's going to look at, like right now, I feel my lips are very dry that I keep sipping. I feel like, okay, that's the biggest, it's now taken about 60% of what I perceive about my face.
Okay.
But you may not even notice it.
Yeah.
Because it's not something you perceive.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? So I am thinking for myself and I'm thinking for what you are thinking.
It's so beautiful because even when we are scared of being judged, right? We're scared of being judged about something that we judge ourselves for.
Exactly. Which is why when you talk about forgiveness of self, right? You're also able to forgive others because, you are judging people by the same yardstick.
Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes they may not even notice.
Oh my God. This is just so beautiful.
And when people talk about beauty and perception of beauty, once you are able to see yourself, it will show. That's why women in the early 30s are when they look the most attractive. It's because you've known what looks good on you. You've known to not project the anxiety outside. And you know that here is the expression this person needs. Here is the expression. I'm not even saying you're manipulating them. It's knowledge.
Yeah.
And you really do not want to go and express anxiety to somebody who's already anxious.
Correct.
You pick from your repertoire. You pick the correct kind of expressions, correct kind of words, correct kind of smile, appearance, makeup, choice of colors, the way you dress, which comes together best for the first time in early 30s. Of course, we in the 40s are, I don't care what you think about me at this point. But then of course we care, but of course we care a little. But then the knowledge happens at each stage where you let go of certain things and that evolution happens.
It reminds me of this book called Psycho-Cybernetics. Have you read the book?
No.
I would highly recommend it. It's
Recommend it,
written
okay.
by Maxwell Maltz. It talks about how a plastic surgeon has done surgery on so many people's faces. And yet, it all goes back to how they perceive themselves even after the surgery is done.
Yeah.
So, there are certain people with the nose surgery done, they still don't perceive themselves with a better nose.
Yeah.
So, the insecurity still remains.
Yeah.
That is when he started to understand how the psyche works, to understand it's not even about how you look.
Yeah.
It's about how you think you look
Yeah.
and how you're going to be perceived by other people.
Yeah.
It plays such a huge role,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when people come to you, right, they watch celebrities. For celebrities, it is their bread and butter. They have to look a specific way. When people come to you, what are the common things that they say? Oh, I want to look like a specific celebrity. And when they ask that, what is your reaction to that?
I've said this before, that I'm lucky that I have a fairly reasonably evolved clientele, and we're also people that walk with people on the journey. Usually the process is such that I get better insights into what they really want over time. So we always stagger the journey a little, saying like, here is how you look now, but these are our goals for now. You come back and we'll see what works for you, and then we will. So I'm not generally a person that likes to fix everything at first visit.
Okay.
I don't think that's even practical, because I would like to know what the person is about and usually the consultation we are a bunch of 5 dermatologists together. I am in different teams depending on who needs me. So all of us, for us, at the clinic, all of us, the thought process is that we would like to add value.
Okay.
We would like to know them more, and we would like to see what it is that will give them maximum value versus doing everything by the book.
Okay.
We're super conservative in general. And one of the key qualities is to identify what must not be changed. Right? It is something that, if somebody has a very strong perception of themselves as having, I would never put I would never use a dominating lipstick, because this is my hero feature. My lips and my chin and my nose are my hero features. Now, if I were to play up my eyes, because I know that they are smaller, I know that they could have been more symmetrical. Right eye smaller than the left, I guess. So it is smaller than the left. So I could try and achieve symmetry, or I could deflect it with my brows.
Okay.
I would choose to let this speak for itself and then see which is the next feature to kind of harmonize it. This is different from person to person. So how much ever somebody wants to look like another person, unless they look like a photocopy of them, they can't look the same way, because there may be a different grammar to that face. And one of the key things is to try and not disturb the most interesting aesthetic about a person, but to identify what enhances it and what deflects the off features. It's as simple as that. Not a lot of genericness that we can do.
Okay.
20 years ago, at least, and now still in places like, in the West, I have people that visit here that tell me, like, where we come from, we need to be seen as having done some work, because that translates to, here's somebody that is actually taking care of themselves. So if you do a lip filler, it has to show. And in here, people will be like, I will do a lip filler, but not even people in my family should
know.
Like, okay, you wear a mask. Because for the first 2 days, it's going to show.
Yeah.
But then that's the aesthetic over here. Like you would want somebody trying to do injectables and nobody should know. And that's why here, non-invasive procedures, so people are talking about texture, people are talking about, not having pigmentation. Those are much bigger goals than people wanting to transform themselves.
Okay.
It used to be there, but I think it's fallen off along the way. Now we will quote one of our not so famous god men, the me in me quote. You've heard of it, right? There's some truth to it.
There is. Actually, there is.
There's a whole relatability factor.
Yes.
Where we are put off by people that look perfect in a way that there is nothing to be fixed, or every feature looks perfect in itself but doesn't come together as a heartwarming, welcoming visage.
Correct.
So the me, which is coming in with my whole baggage, would like to see the me in you, which is connecting to me saying, I'm also not all that perfect. Can we hang out together? Yeah. Or you close off saying like, oh, that's so perfect over there, may not like me as much. Or you get into a different image where, oh, she's perfect, I'm perfect, but then the your relationship is at the level where you're judging at that, then you don't get past that layer, which is, for us, appearance is one thing, no? We like, somebody looks great till they open their mouth. You speak and you fix it. And it used to be big dating advice back then. He looks great, but you got to let him speak. So you remember that used to be the standard. I mean, you're like a good decade between us, but that used to be the standard advice from seniors.
It's still the
It still
case.
is. It used to be when one of the Yes Minister things. She looks good from far, but when she speaks, she looks far from good. One of the Yes Minister quotes, I think.
This is very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So
But of late, there is this one trend where most of the actresses look the same.
You may not see it as much in South India.
Yeah.
The genericity is far lesser here.
Okay. I mean, what is the science behind wanting to look a specific way? Is it symmetry? What is it?
See, there is a equivalent input from what the industry has been, the beauty industry has been saying that here are the standards. Like Pantone colors, they give out values. Like, this is the Pantone color of the year. For example, in Japan, there used to be one crazy beauty trend where people actually inject a lot of saline into the forehead where it swells up and they create a donut there. I know. Yeah. And there used to be the huge, massive lip fillers where people had to be seen that they are able to afford fillers and look a particular way.
Okay.
Like they can get transformed. I don't think it ever took off in the South because for us, skin clarity, skin pigmentation are big deals. Fairness is a bigger concept for all the connotations that come with it. Fairness is a huge concept in our culture. Of late, it has moved in a very healthy way to skin reflectance and skin clarity. It's a much welcome respite because earlier people used to come and say things like, I want to look as fair as a wall. I'm like, okay, but then you will look like a wall. That's about it. So I know that used to be, the case back then, but then the genericity has fallen off quite massively after we have access to all kinds of world images, all kinds of populations, how people look, ethnicities, thanks to social media.
Okay.
Now, you know that a person from the Far East looks a particular way. So you are able to understand that is also a kind of a face.
Okay.
From the Middle East, that's a kind of a face. So now, because we're constantly exposed to multiple ethnicities through our social media interactions. Now, earlier we used to look at people who used to henna their hair and they used to like, yeah, Trump is also like that.
Yes.
Right? you see that. Right? There's so much all over the place. So then now the whole idea of genericity is kind of taken down.
Okay.
And people are more comfortable saying that, okay, here is an attractive face and this is why it's attractive. I think the same fashion industry has come full circle to understanding or to be able to say that uniqueness matters and some relatability matters. And so we go back to the me and me. I would have never thought that I would think so deeply about that.
No, I mean, you as a person is quite a deep person, but to take reference from there and to put it here and understand it is coming from me, it's phenomenal. I just love that idea. I don't know how many people will understand this, but anyways, I'll put this clip as a reference for you to understand what she's actually talking about. All right. So next, what I want to understand is how do we get acne or pimples?
Okay. It's a beautiful exercise in exposome science, right? So about a good 70%, 60 to 70%, or a little more than that, is genetically inherited, which means that children with parents, one or two parents, or one or both parents having acne will have a chance of maybe 70% chance of having acne themselves or pimples themselves. But this is when the data was when we were seeing a lot of teenagers being brought in with acne, right? That used to be the original case back then. But now what we see is an explosion of people with having adult acne.
Correct.
For men, it could be whey protein causing acne. For women, it could be the number of products that we use. And for both, it could be stress, lack of sleep, lifestyle factors. And there's access to a lot of food any time of the day, over and over, giving you a good bit of insulin resistance. So it's changed from being primarily genetic, where the genome would have been everything, to becoming an exposome factor, where so much is coming in from the external aspect.
Okay.
And this has happened. I'm so excited because this has happened in my lifetime.
Okay.
In real life, I've been able to see the shift.
Okay.
And now we see more people complaining of acne from stuff they used or food they have. We were never lactose intolerant, or at least the news about lactose intolerance was not commonplace,
Correct.
right? But now we know that we can have problems with milk. We know that we can have problems with bread,
Gluten,
which
yeah.
used to be like, what do you have to school? What will you take on travel to the train?
Correct.
Bread at the moment.
Correct.
That's very common.
Correct.
But now we are intolerant. As a whole lot of things that have changed because our lifestyle, the way we live, and we are seeing real-time evolutions, what was happening in generations. We're seeing accelerated evolutions either at the mental, physical level. Now,
Okay.
it's become all so fast.
Okay.
So with pimples, you're also seeing that the number of factors that can contribute to acne, because we are trying the 10-step Korean routine, which is BS according to me. And then there is also the thought process around, applying or something as basic as applying a lip tint, which is meant for the lips which do not have the same kind of oil glands as the skin does, to the cheeks and people breaking out.
Oh, yeah.
It's very unique to that use case,
Okay.
right? So what used to be the largest thing that we actually learned about in terms of genes and all of that, it's completely come into lifestyle. That's a wonderful example in exposome science. Now, when we want to fix somebody, we of course take the history of how did you start out, but we also try and listen to the many
Other
factors, and then try to say here is what you may need to let go of to reduce acne, versus here are the things that you need to do more.
Okay.
Sometimes you just slow down,
Okay.
get rid of these things, see if the acne goes up, and then that's a good thing.
And what is the difference between a filler and a Botox?
Okay. So botulinum is a muscle relaxant. So it's basically, I say muscle relaxant in the simplest of ways. It's a toxin. It belongs to a group of chemicals that are capable of paralyzing the muscles.
Okay.
Okay, so that's said. That's why it's called a toxin.
So the purpose of it was something else. Okay.
So it was discovered by an ophthalmologist dermatologist couple.
Okay.
The ophthalmologist wife was injecting it for asymmetrical muscle activity.
Okay.
And then when they noticed it erased forehead lines, they took it up into Botox cosmetic. Before that, Botox was used for neurological conditions.
Okay.
They even use it for children with spasticity.
Okay.
So it is used in multiple indications.
Okay.
It is used for people who have tics. I'm just talking about in a very, very simplified way. There are multiple uses it was put to before it became a cosmetic thing.
Okay.
Now, it is used when you talk about muscles causing wrinkles and Botox being used to relax those muscles. Then it makes sense that as we grow older, we will, because of overuse of certain muscles of facial expression, we will have developed lines which come into action when the muscles work. And this can be used to relax the muscles.
Okay. It basically relaxes the muscles. Okay.
Because the wrinkling happens from aging, it is an anti-aging treatment.
Okay, got it.
Okay? Wrinkling happens from aging. Botox relaxes wrinkles. Therefore, Botox is an anti-aging treatment.
Okay.
Botox is the trade name for the botulinum toxin itself. Multiple other brands exist, but most of us are very conversant with this brand.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, coming to fillers, fillers are usually made of hyaluronic acid. They can be made of multiple other agents. The hyaluronic acid that is used in a filler is much more stable and durable than the hyaluronic acid we use in our creams.
Okay.
Similar type, but there is a lot of structural modifications that are done to make sure that the filling stays in place.
For how many months?
So the original instruction used to be that we'll have to fill once every 6 months to 1.5 years.
Okay.
But there are people that have used fillers in which last for about, I have filled them when they were 20s, late 20s, and I haven't touched them in their 30s.
It still stays?
Because, we age differently.
Oh,
It may
okay.
no longer become relevant.
Okay. Okay.
Because
Got
the
it.
face changes differently. Because we age with something that makes the face look fuller, naturally.
Okay, interesting. So now, what are the side effects of fillers or Botox?
So if you look at fillers, there are a fair bit of side effects, which basically is because it's because of the way that the procedure is done. But in the hands of experienced injectors, you would be reasonably safe. But when it comes to botulinum or Botox, there are no long-term side effects.
Okay.
People talk about long-term consequences, neurological consequences and stuff, but the kind of in literature that is there in view of the safety, I think it's probably not a very real or practical side effect, which can only be attributable to the toxin itself. There may be a few and far between case reports which talk about unusual circumstances, but I don't think it applies to the general practice of botulinum itself. But when it comes to fillers, we hear about it quite often. That, of course, outside of the common bruising, which is normal for anything. I mean, those are not even, I wouldn't call them side effects. It translates into two parts where you can have some level of inflammation in some individuals who are predisposed to it. So then we need to pick the person and the procedure and the product very correctly. Then there's a thing that, unfortunately, among younger dermatologists, it's considered glamorous to be doing fillers and Botox because it changes people's shapes and stuff.
Okay.
Then the youngest ones really go in without a lot of experience, and that's a concern for us. All of our regulatory bodies are constantly working to make people more experienced. So then there's a lot of attention that's being given to education around this. Then comes the group of people who will say that fillers did not work for them because they did not know what they were expecting from it. One of the reasons I really don't go or did not choose to go deep into filler practice is primarily because, like you said, if people did not know what they can achieve with fillers for their particular face, and if they did not know what their face needs, they're going to be very unhappy about fillers. That is by and far the largest group.
Oh, okay.
These two groups are fairly smaller, and in the right hands, with the right kind of choice of product, and if done hygienically and carefully, these can be very game-changing or life-changing for a number of people who will appreciate and enjoy the value a lot.
Okay.
Botulinum, I think, is fairly commonplace. So let's say if a very inexperienced injector injects you somewhere here, then you can have a droop for about 4 to 3 months, 4 months max. Usually it tends to go away.
Okay.
Because that is the whole problem, that people don't like that Botox is temporary.
Right.
It does go away, so you don't have to worry as much. That said, it entirely depends upon patient selection, careful selection by whoever is injecting, and the experience of the injector.
Okay. And also recently there's been a lot of uproar on social media when it comes to retinol and how random influencers keep talking about that without a doctor's prescription. First, what is retinol and do we need doctor's prescription for that?
So you have retinol and tretinoin. I have a nice blog up on this one somewhere in Chosen Store. So the tretinoin is the prescription part. Retinol is the not for prescription, but what we call as OTC, over the counter. You can just pick it off the internet or you can pick it over the counter. And that's a slightly more easier version, more comfortable to use without a prescription. It is without a prescription. The influencers that are talking about the product, mostly the problem is when they're talking about tretinoin, which is difficult to get people accustomed to, or to start as a protocol, to come out of the protocol, which definitely needs a derm scare.
Okay.
Retinol is commonplace and it's one of the most important anti-aging products, ingredients out there. While I still feel that pigment-reducing treatments or pigment-reducing creams like tranexamic acid are higher or equal to retinol, retinol is probably the biggest deal when it comes to anti-aging for Caucasian skin.
Okay.
So that still is there, the retinol wave keeps coming in, and you can actually see very good improvements with retinol itself.
Okay.
So what retinol, how much percentage, all of that entirely depends upon how the formulation sits. There's no clear percentage that wins here. It depends upon how well you're able to use it.
Okay.
To summarize this, or to put it very simply, the learning curve for retinol is high.
Okay.
If you are flaking and the skin barrier is upset, and if you do not know when to stop, you could end up damaging it way more. Yes. So retinol has a way in which it prepares or it works on the skin. And if you do not know which stage and where you are in, and how you have to be handheld and guided for a little bit, or you have to have very high knowledge about your skin, be able to listen to your skin, even retinol is best had by guidance.
Okay.
Tretinoin is a far more temperamental, difficult to control fellow, best handled by dermatologists.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What is IV therapy?
So you have intravenous infusions of a number of antioxidants. Most commonly spoken about one is glutathione. I would call that as one of the most promising, but one of the most difficult to customize kind of treatments.
Okay.
It works differently for different folks. We are one of the few clinics, or maybe the one clinic that actually does look at skin melanin indices when simultaneously giving glutathione injections, right? Now, what happens is, what we've learned also is that the dose requirement for different individuals is different. Think of it as, let's say my cup is half full, literally, right? And then if I'm trying to add more glutathione in here, I will only get the improvement for this.
Correct.
But if people are expecting the whitening that happens from this, it won't happen because I already have this level of yeah.
That is because of the melanin we have.
The glutathione reserves that the body already has.
Okay, got it.
So I've observed that the best results happen when people have a lot of oxidation damage. If you don't have the oxidation damage, you won't see a thing. And if you already have a lot of oxidation damage, you're going to take many more treatments as compared to somebody who has less.
Okay.
And most of the times that people come into this whitening clinics where they're doing glutathione, they're also putting a lot of bleaching agents on the skin, which like hydroquinone and stuff like that. Sometimes people outright are given steroids as well on the skin. So people usually connect everything together. Glutathione per se, I feel, will be a great drug, is a great drug. Many derms use it for conditions where we see a lot of oxidation damage, like our pigmentation conditions that happen with hair dye use. I think there's a whole potential for it to be used in a different way.
Okay. Yeah. And how long does the effect stay on us?
It depends upon the individuals. For some people, the maintenance is what we do at like once every 3 months even. During we saw people didn't come in for maintenance at all, but they were still able to maintain the results because everybody was indoors.
Okay.
There's a lot depends upon who the person exposome science.
Yes. I love that. I'm just going to research on that. It's just exciting.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. It's like, oh my God, these are the factors that can actually impact this, influence this. You can reach your optimal health, optimal mindset. Yeah. It's crazy.
And it's going to be because now knowledge and information is easy to share.
Yeah.
It's going to be available for everybody. And then that's true empowerment.
Yeah, that is true.
It probably was around, like people identified that cigarette smoking causes cancer. That's a classic example of exposome science. But to coin to coin the term and to actually say that it's not just one factor, but there are multiple factors which make an impact on who gets to have the cancer and who doesn't, who escapes it. All of that is relatively recent because we have better data processing these days.
Correct.
And we have more access to,
research and data, all of that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does smoking do to the skin?
Oh, a lot.
Okay.
Right. Not good things, of course. So there's a couple of studies or like a research paper that talks about how even exposure to cigarette smoke within a matter of 2 to 3 minutes can cause oxidation damage in the skin. And people say one cigarette, I was like, no, even if your neighbor is smoking, go away from them. Unfriend that friend. The cigarette smoking is considered what we call as an internal pollution. And it has a lot of particulate matter in it, which has been known to cause anything from pigmentation to skin wrinkling to skin sallowness to dullness to hair loss to impaired sperm quality. Those studies are also out there, to impacting your body at multiple levels. The impact on cardiovascular health, the impact on cancer. So cigarette smoking is something that we feel, especially when people, thinking about procedures, I say that you can optimize or maximize the results so much more if you will quit. And especially for hair loss treatments. People say, oh, psoriasis. Psoriasis has a plus minus relationship, but people who talk about hair loss treatments, for example, when you say smoking has an impact on early graying, smoking has an impact on hair loss, it doesn't have to be that the impact is, it doesn't have to be like an impact that's huge, because you are already having the gene layout to lose hair. For you, smoking may just do that. But my friend smokes, he may not have the same thing. So, but there are not a lot of studies. Yes, but because this new data is coming in. So some people might be like, show me very hard evidence. The hardest evidence is that you are losing hair yourself. That's
what more do you need?
Yes, in you, it may be that factor that may help.
Yeah.
So for us to think about population science, there's population data, but there's also the journey of n equal to 1. It is you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how does regular exercising, like?
Okay, so we have this this framework of what we call as insulin resistance, which came in when I probably got to know about it when maybe about 15 years backish. So then one of the things is that there are many ways that our male hormones, androgens, female hormones, male hormones impact, especially in my specialty, the skin and the hair. And one of the pathways that they get accentuated is what is called as an insulin resistance pathway. And because of this insulin resistance, where the receptors are not working the best way that they should be working, the insulin receptor interaction is not happening in the most optimal way. I'm totally dumbing it down just for understanding.
Got it.
That is triggered a lot by inactivity, our sleep cycles, the way we consume food, the time we consume food, the way we sleep, the time we go to sleep. All of that impact, our stress levels also impact. Just reducing insulin resistance by way of muscle building helps everything, including cardiometabolic health, including cognitive health, as to how mentally young you will be as you age, including a true, at a cellular level, including how young you get to be.
Okay.
And that typically is the, at this point, it's almost like a foundational discussion that we have for people to encourage people to be able to build muscle.
Okay.
Work out. When people say I walk, I always say walking is for older people. We are in our 40s, so we should do more. And if they are in their 50s, I say walking is for people in 80s. We should be doing strength training. And somebody comes in when they're really, really in the older group, which I don't really get to see in the clinic, but outside, like, do you know so-and-so, their life begins at 70? I'm like, go work out. I don't particularly enjoy it myself.
Okay.
I have a great trainer. Thank God for that. And I don't particularly enjoy the idea that I have to put myself through pain. But I do it. I push myself to do it. Because for me, that's one of the ways I'm building mental resilience also.
Yes.
Building character a little, maybe. So, yeah, for sure. I just tell people, think of it as the penance that you were asked to do, during school and all that. You were like asked to sit quiet for, build character. So, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. What are some of the best skincare habits you've seen work consistently?
I always talk about sleep first. I always talk about having less sugar. Diet is important. Antioxidants in diet is so important. I also talk about muscle building, because it's very important to how you age. You also want to not just look pretty in the face. No, you have to have a body that feels like you're aging better day by day. So I feel that that's holistic. Outside of that, sunscreen has been my go-to. I start consultations with talking about how willing are you to use sunscreen. And most people are willing these days, so that's okay. And then we talk about skincare habits would be basic stuff like cleansing before going to bed. Cleansing after, especially if you're coming in from a very highly polluted outdoors, because pollution causes pigmentation and it's established. And it would also be about antioxidants, collagen intake. I use oral antioxidant, pycnogenol. I use collagen. I also take methyl sulfonyl methane. These are my go-to stuff.
Okay.
I do a fair bit of omega in diet. flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, the works, almonds. And I also try consciously to add a lot of colored fruits and vegetables to diet. I could do better. I could do a whole lot better. Sometimes it behaves, it's like நான் ரஜினி சொல்ற மாதிரி தான், நான் ஒரு தடவை சாப்பிட்ட 100 நாள் சாப்பிட்ட மாதிரி நினைச்சுக்கிறேன். I should do a lot better, but I'm better than what I was last year.
Right. And also on the flip side, what are the most damaging or overrated habits people need to just ditch?
They do too much. See, your skin is not built to take so much. Your skin is not built to take so much, into the point that researchers have shown that the more number of products that you use, you may be at higher risk of carcinoma malignancies, because there is a processing cap, or a, the skin, the exposure that we have, it's not black or white, but it's gray. As long as you're within threshold limits, you may get to enjoy the benefits that these products, the skincare products, the makeup products, your self-care products give you. Once you exceed threshold, it's just a matter of choosing the best ones that work for you, because you're basically putting yourself at risk of too much exposure, too much processing. So I recently had someone that came in and said, like, I don't use sunscreens because, this is considered, the sun is the source of energy and this concept. So I was asking her, then how come you use nail paint, which is way more toxic? So the thing is that kind of education knowledge needs to go out. And that's not going to be built over a day. And that's not going to be built at a level that you scroll.
Okay.
And she came back at me saying, like, but that's vegan, and so is sunscreen. So the idea is that we are falling for labels which make sense to us at a very, it's so easy for us to process certain things because you are trusting whoever says it without understanding whether they have the credentials to say it.
Yeah.
But it sounds correct to you because, oh yes, vegans got to be good, but we really don't need that much non-vegetarian stuff to make cosmetics and skincare. We really don't use those things. The milk that is used in certain lactic acid comes from plants.
Okay.
We really do not need to use a lot of stuff.
Right.
So the problem that people do is not understanding this. And I don't blame them. I don't think we've given an organized knowledge around this. I think many of us are coming into the understanding that products play a big role in people's lives over and above the treatments that are given for sick people.
Okay.
Right? So then there's a lot of importance that we give now to people who use products at a wellness level. So not doing too much is great. Doing stuff without understanding what it stands for, what you stand for, is also a problem. And then going with trends without understanding the rich cultural, ethnic skin that you have is also a problem. Skin bleaching to the point that you were never able to go in the sun is a problem. And giving skincare the importance that it deserves and not making it the front and center of everything is important. See, my job is to put out skincare knowledge, but it is not the front and center of my life outside of work, right? My job is to put out information. My job is to make sure that your products are safe. My job is I am doing so much more than putting out information. Just because I'm putting out information, I'm doing so much more around learning how to work with people better. I'm doing so much more around understanding what the ecological impact of what we use is. But my own skincare and my journey is like 10 minutes. I did more today because I'm coming in. I want to make it clear that I'm here. I respect this whole platform. And I want to come in projecting a certain signaling for others, saying like, here is who I am. So today I may have spent about 7 to 8 minutes more. But otherwise I have like about 5 minutes to rush out the door. 2 minutes for sunscreen and maybe like 1 minute for kajal. Otherwise you won't know where my eyes are. And that's about it.
And you just spoke about nail paints. I mean, what is it with the extensions and all of that? Talk to us about it.
Very toxic stuff.
Okay.
You can use it once in a while. See, again, it's cumulative damage. Right? I'd be like, for your wedding, do it. For big events, do it. Don't do it on a regular basis. It's about, I don't have data today to tell you like how many times you can use. I don't have hard data. But I would say like, unless it's really required, stay off it. Because it's cumulative damage. Now, it could be 2 times a year for me. It could be 10 times a year for you once we get to know the exposome data.
Okay.
But right now we don't. But I'd say like, maybe play between 3 and 4, because I think based on what knowledge there is that you should be using this the least.
Why do you think it's so toxic?
The chemicals in that will release X amount of pro-carcinogenic substances.
And even when we're eating with our hands.
No, it's just that when you're doing it itself, the inhalation part and everything. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The higher risk is for in the salon people. When they do a straightening and smoothing, the higher risk is for them.
Oh boy. Okay. And they're not even aware of this.
They would have these, there's a guideline, there's an OSHA guideline that they have, that they must have carry out X number of treatments. Rooms should be ventilated. There are guidelines. I don't know how they're followed.
Okay.
But there are guidelines, at least big salons usually follow them, saying like, you tear when somebody's getting their hair straightened when you go for a haircut, right?
Okay.
When you straighten the hair,
it just comes out. Okay.
you tear up.
Yeah.
There's like so much of vapors that come in that have, I'm using very basic terms here.
Yes.
So much of vapors that come in that can have pro-carcinogenic activity. And then if you're somebody that's just gone in for a haircut, but somebody next to you is getting it, you're also getting exposed. And so they have this X amount of distance between chairs and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what happens when we go to bed without removing the makeup?
It's just that the skin is that much more occluded. You can have bugs, small bugs that some mites that can come and inhabit uncleaned, unwashed skin.
Okay.
So it's just that you're putting your skin at risk of what happens if you don't brush your teeth, kind of a thing. Yeah.
It's very similar to that.
Probably not as impactful to others, but definitely impactful to the skin.
And what's a current trend or a popular product that you believe is doing more harm than good?
I think it's more about how people are actually using it versus the products themselves. I don't like this hair identifier spray. Okay, so to make you shave better, so when you're doing face shaving, people spray an aerosol.
Yeah.
That's so toxic. That's so dumb. Why would you do something like that? Why would you do something like that? And if you can't see the hair when you're shaving, who can see the hair? But they actually use it saying that it's better when you're doing makeup. It sits better and all of those things. It's just pretty toxic. Would I recommend that people ever use it? I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. You figure out better makeup products. That's about it.
Okay. Is there a trend you wish people would stop following altogether?
Just that 10-step routine and stuff. You layer products from different brands and you don't even know if they were even tested to work together. You don't even know. And people layer retinol, which actually is an angry guy when you layer it. Because it's been tested in a way that it penetrates in a particular way, right? And when you layer it with stuff, you're basically dumbing down the retinol. Or even worse, you're allowing patchy absorption, which creates patchy results. And then you say, okay, my retinol didn't work for me. Like, you're using it in a different way. But the problem is that the knowledge around all of these things also, like I wouldn't have known if I was not in product chemistry. I wouldn't have known if I actually did not look at how a product changes when in the test tube. I wouldn't have known if I hadn't seen it being born. Right?
Okay.
I would have seen the outcome. I would have understood in a particular way in the clinical sense. But if I hadn't seen, for example, you can make a zinc 30, 50 SPF sunscreen become useless by just changing a point in pH. But I would have never understood it because I've always seen the finished goods when I'm working. So if I had not had this extension, which I really reluctantly went into initially,
Okay.
because nobody else was making those things
The
for me.
research part of it.
Yeah. Because I actually had reached out to multiple other companies initially when I started out saying like, I have the idea, but I don't want to do it myself because I am a clinician first. But at that point, it felt like there were people who were understanding how this needs to be tweaked. Over the last maybe about 12 years, I asked for it first in 2013. In 12 years, I realized like, okay, I'm going to have to do this at some level. Yeah. And that's when the knowledge about how products interact, how this whole exposome science came into being, all of that came through over a period of time.
Okay.
So I think this is a nascent field. More and more people are getting to understand this, but over a period of time, again, I'm going to invoke exposome science.
Yeah.
We will get to know way better than we do now.
Okay. And now coming back to the hair, right? So for my husband, he can go without taking a hair wash for 2 to 3 days. His hair is really good. For me, 1 2 days I miss, it becomes greasy. So one, I want to understand why some hair type or scalp type is such, and second, what causes dandruff?
Why are people different is as simple as why are we short and tall.
Okay.
It's just the type. It's just that some of us have more oil glands, more active oil glands. I don't think we can straitjacket into saying like XYZ is like this. I think it's more like, it's why so and so. It's more like a personality quirk also. We're all different people. So some people have oil glands that produce oil so much more. Some people have that less. Some people have skin that has a faster turnover rate, so you see it as flaking. Some people don't have that. Majority of this is genetically determined, but earlier we never used to have as much dandruff in Chennai, in my opinion, in my practice at least, as compared to now, because we're all now living in very cold temperatures thanks to air conditioning.
Oh, okay.
I do think that some parts of Europe don't get exposed to as much cold environment as we are getting exposed right here.
Okay.
Right? So that dryness, the constant dryness also makes a difference. So what started out predominantly being genetic is also now tempered with the exposures that we have. I think that's the most repeated word in this whole.
Yes. And I love it. I'm just going to go do a lot of research on that.
I sent you stuff. It's fun.
Yes,
It's fun.
please. I'm
It's
just
fun.
going to read about it.
Yeah, it's fun. And then you also had the question around how dandruff happens.
Yes.
So then some individuals who do have a genetic predisposition to easily acquire certain types of fungal infection or harbor certain types of fungal infection as compared to others who put out the oil on the scalp in a specific composition of fatty acids in there, are more at risk of this fungal infection thriving, growing. And then they can have visible flaking, which is worsened. So it's like a
Next level,
vicious
next-
cycle. It kind of feeds into each other. And then there are some individuals who may not have the susceptibility at all. And so they can go between hair washes, depending upon that. But by and large, if you are in a place which is quite polluted like ours, I'd recommend once in every 2 to 3 days, not less frequent than that.
Okay.
Because we also, when we're oilier, we're also acting like a dust trap, especially with the particulate matter pollution. And we also have a decent level of indoor pollution these days,
Okay.
but not as much as other cities in India, but is there.
Okay.
So dandruff, people also worsen it with the wrong hair habits, wrong grooming habits, like applying a lot of hair oil overnight.
Okay.
And I've said this before, but it's worth repeating because it's something I really think people should look at. There's already published data that shows that olive oil, coconut oil can be good ways in which we can make the fungus thrive. And then if we already have an established fungal component in the dandruff and you're just giving it extra oil, then you really don't want to be doing that.
Okay.
But the tradition is that, yes. And lots of things the tradition gave us. There are lots of things, there are lots of good stuff that we could be doing. And a lot of things we gave away when we felt the tradition wasn't doing it enough for us. Like we see a lot of women wearing trousers now because it's more convenient. That doesn't make us any less traditional about our values at
Yes.
heart. And this could be one of these that you give up coconut oil and still feel it's okay for you to not feel traditional about it.
Okay.
Maybe that's not what the umbilical cord is about.
Wow. Okay. And do anti-dandruff shampoos actually work?
Yeah, they do.
They do.
They do. Now, there are several mechanisms by which they work. One of them is this, we have a fungus, then we try getting rid of the fungus. So we have a lot of antifungal elements. Recently, coincidentally, we had just in Jan-Feb, we had put in a product which actually talks about restoring scalp microbiome, at the same time balancing the exfoliation, at the same time putting in agents that are able to restore balance. It's now become more about not just getting the fungus out, because I do know that there's a lot of antifungal products out there. So we want, and the resistance to these products is also there. Not all of them have it, but some of them do have it. So we wanted to come up with something that's a little different in concept, where we are restoring balance. And the kind of feedback that people have been giving, I felt like, okay, I should have done this sooner. As me typically, right? Like, oh, it's a good thing, but I should have done this sooner.
It's good. Not so good as yet. You could have done it better.
I know. I should have done it a couple of years ago. What was I thinking about? Because the feedback is also that way. Like, Mama, like, why did you not do this earlier? Okay, I'm working. I'm working on it.
When we do face yoga, right? When we touch our face very often, does it cause pigmentation?
Fortunately, we inherited melanin, which protects us against skin cancer. And unfortunately, melanin is a person that doesn't like to be touched, handled, stroked, pushed, pulled too hard. Melanin is an injury response. It will happen when you scrape your hand, for example. Right? The melanin is there in the body, and the hyperpigmentation happens when you scrape yourself, or any injury is like that. So when you over handle the skin, especially people used to use a lot of these papaya scrubs. People used to use, when I was younger, we used to use pumice stones. Can you believe that? It used to hurt, and we still use them because that was what was written in all the beauty things back then. Thank God, nothing much happened. But for some other people who used scrubs on the arms and the back, the pigmentation is a lot more. It's a reality that increased handling of the skin, increased friction causes pigmentation in skin of color. That's how different we are from what we're following on the internet based on Western values.
Okay.
If there are Western values that we must not follow, it is these.
Okay.
Right? Not women going out and doing stuff on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And also when we use loofah for the body, does it also...
It's a scrub. Yeah. We don't recommend loofahs at all.
Okay.
Loofah scrubs, no.
So generally when you use a body wash, it is
just use your hands, yeah.
Okay, that's more than enough.
How do you bathe the baby? We don't use a loofah. We just take the thing, foam it up and then apply. That's about it.
And when people buy these derma rollers at home and do it, is it safe?
We've seen enough people coming in with infections, so I wouldn't recommend it. But there are some people who do it very well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So is it compulsory or necessary to get a facial done every month?
Facial is done. That's the last century.
Yeah?
It's done.
What do we do now? Face cleanup, what do we do to remove the dead cells?
We do exfoliation. We do a DIY peels, we do exfoliation, and we do any of these procedures that we spoke about, which are facials you do at the parlor. That's like completely, and you use skincare right now, which is like sunscreen, retinol, all of that, which is far more evidence-based in terms of delivering results compared to facials.
Right.
But you feel nice when you do a facial. So if you do go to the parlor, get yourself a foot spa. I mean, feel nice, but don't let people touch and handle your face.
So I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions. Just tell me if it is truth or myth.
Okay.
Washing your face more often gives you clearer skin.
Not true.
Okay. Natural skincare products are always better for your skin.
Not really.
The more expensive the product, the better it works.
Plus and minus. Some of the best ingredients are expensive. So yes,
that's why
some truth may be there.
Okay. Oily skin doesn't need moisturizer.
Yes and no. If you have inherent good sebum, it doesn't need you to moisturize if you're in a humid environment also. But if you do tend to get dehydrated while you are in air-conditioned environments, even if you had oily skin to start with, you will need a moisturizer.
You can shrink your pores with the right products.
To some extent, yes. To a decent extent, yes.
You don't need skincare in your 20s.
You don't need a lot of skincare in your 20s. You just need good habits as well.
Okay. People with darker skin tones don't need sunscreen.
They do. Our melanin will put us at risk of a lot more hyperpigmentation. And the darker we go, unfortunately, even visible light can make us pigmented.
Okay. If you're using sunscreen, you don't need to worry about skin aging.
Can worry less.
Worry less.
Significantly less. Yeah.
Okay. Toothpaste can help shrink a pimple.
And give you a burn that lands you at the dermatologist.
Drinking more water will cure acne.
Will help. About, say, 3.3 to 3.2 liters is recommended.
Okay. Retinol thins the skin.
Depends upon the formulation and not completely true.
Okay. You can reverse aging with skincare.
To a large extent.
Okay. Facial exercises can prevent wrinkles.
Nope. The more you exercise something, the bulkier the muscle becomes. And in the face, you really don't want bulky muscles because they bring in the lines.
Wow. Okay. Shaving makes your hair grow thicker.
Nope.
Okay. Washing your hair every day causes hair loss.
Not really.
Dandruff.
Depends upon genes.
Okay. Dandruff means your scalp is dry.
Not really. Even the flakes contain oil. So, yeah.
A gray hair can turn black again with the right products.
Very less likely. If there's a deficiency, or if there's an underlying autoimmune condition, yes, it does reverse, but it's not so much the right product that, no. Unfortunately, some of these products can also pigment the skin, so you should be very careful about graying reversal products. Should be very careful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the skincare industry profiting from making people insecure?
Yes and no. I would like to believe that there are some of us who are doing the right job for the right reasons. And on a larger scale, culturally as well as in terms of marketing, I guess it's pretty easy to play on people's insecurities because appearance means so much to people.
Right. So do most people overdo the skincare routines because of influencer culture?
I think influencer culture has put it in people's minds that there is something called a skincare routine. In as much as that is true, I'm happy.
Okay.
However, how much you do, how far you do, entirely depends upon the quality of what the influencer puts out. And I think some of them do a very good job. I wouldn't diss everybody,
Okay.
but majority of them haven't a clue what they're talking about. So I would say it's also the experts that need to speak up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are expensive skincare brands just marketing hype with the same ingredients as drugstore products?
It entirely depends upon the grade of the product. For example, nano zinc is cheaper than non-nano zinc.
Okay.
But we need non-nano zinc because it's more eco-friendly than nano zinc.
Okay.
But it's all zinc oxide. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
So now we could do something super cheap and say, okay, the same ingredient, which is why I generally think that I was there once, right? I was there on the other side where I said that, look at the label, look at all the ingredients. Where is this olive oil written? It's written in the last one, which means that the shampoo is not fully olive oil. But you can't make a shampoo with olive oil.
Correct.
And that I know when I walk to the other side.
Okay.
Right? And I say, okay, why wasn't, because on the front it's written enriched with 100% pure olive oil. See, that 100% pure is that olive oil is 100% pure. My mind read it as 100% olive oil. And you can't make a shampoo with 100% olive oil. So I'm confidently turning to look at where they're putting it and what they have said that. So I wouldn't call this so much as a marketing issue as it is about what are people responding to, because I did respond to the 100%.
Got it.
Right? But now with the scientific knowledge, you can't, if it's 100% olive oil, it'll be olive oil.
Yeah, okay.
Can't be shampoo. So the understanding is quite different.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What's one popular skincare product or brand you would never use yourself?
I wouldn't use a sunscreen spray. The most important aspect of toxicity comes from inhalational toxicity of sunscreens more than application. And when you're spraying sunscreen on the face, for example, when you're spraying sunscreen everywhere, you inhale so much more sunscreen. And that's something I definitely wouldn't do.
Okay.
A lotion is still the best way to apply. A cream is still the best way. Most of the sunscreens have inhalational toxicity when you inhale them over and over and over.
Okay.
And that's so wasteful for me because you're spraying and half the stuff goes on your skin, half the stuff. I would not use a sunscreen stick either.
Okay.
I would not use a sunscreen stick. I would definitely not use a sunscreen mist. I would not use sunscreen on my scalp. Oh, I have a lot of things that I can talk about.
All right. Have you ever disagreed with other dermatologists on popular treatment or practice?
Of course. We do that all of the time.
Do you believe the beauty industry thrives on making people feel not good enough?
I can't speak for the industry per se. I can speak for what I can be within that.
Okay.
For example, from practice to products, for me, I feel that if it's comfortable for you, because it's not exactly life or death situation out here, right? You're doing something for a particular aspirational value in your life. If you see it that way, happy to. But on the other hand, is it that, when you talk about beauty industry, is it that this is the must-have bag for this season? Is it the must-have trousers for this season? These are the shades of lipstick that have to be bought this year. I cleanly miss all of this. Like I told you, I have stuff in my wardrobe from before I got married. I have a set of bangles that I bought when I was in class 12. And that's pretty much my only pink bangles that I have. So for me, the beauty industry saying things like, okay, this is a must-have this year. No, I think if you know yourself very deep, I wouldn't blame that on the industry per se.
Okay.
But I also would blame who we are in the industry to drive things forward. So
For everyone who's watching this podcast, I mean, it need not even be a skincare message. It can be anything. What is your message for them?
I believe that by choosing to listen to things and having them reasoned out over and above having your attention grabbed every few seconds, right? I think people who are watching this podcast have made the right decision. And I'm just going to congratulate you on that. That's about it.
It's so beautiful. I mean, when you write poems, no, if you publish it somewhere, let me know. I want to read it. There's actually so much depth in you. I mean, this is exactly not what I expected this conversation to be like, right? I thought, okay, it's a dermatologist who's going to come. I'm going to break all these myths that are there around skin and hair and all of that. Damn, I'm mind blown. I'm glad.
I enjoyed the conversation with you. There's always a joy when you meet like-minded people, and I'm saying like-minded people who do not self-declare as like-minded, but people who are able to hold a conversation at the level that you really see into people's souls. See, I use the word soul, energy, soul, two things. So
it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time. You're surrounded by people like
the
this.
science is there. The science is there. It's very much there. So thank you so much for having me. I totally enjoyed.
I love this conversation.
What a way to begin the week. Thank you.
I know. I had a fabulous conversation. Your team also has been extremely supportive. Thank you so much for coming here. I love this. I'm sure everybody's going to love this too.
Thank you so much.